I know that some of my friends on here are questioning my alliances in terms of my political persuasions, so to speak. Basically, I'm anti-corruption. And this is sort of how the teabagger movement started out in the beginning, when they were still independent, that is. But I will say one thing tonight. The entire teabagger movement has been taken over by right-wing reactionary forces in this country. And if you can't see that by now, as an independent teabagger, then you're lost. This movement has been taken over, little by little, by some of the most right-wing elements in the Republican Party. And to call yourselves independent at this point is essentially a joke. There's no doubt that the major push, particularly through this convention now, at $540 a plate, is no longer a grassroots movement. Since actually some of that grassroots supporters can't afford it. Talk about elitism. All of you teabaggers have essentially been duped into a reactionary movement which is not just anti-government, but more, it's not even anti-corporate. And it's the corporations who are actually controlling the government. But there is no outcry from this side at all. In fact, this movement is now being supported by the very same people which the grassroots in the very beginning were against, namely the likes of Glenn Beck, Rush Limbaugh, Fox News, and all the rest. So if you can't see by now that you have been completely co-opted into a large propaganda scheme, and you may notice now that the mainstream media is giving much coverage to this little convention, all the while proclaiming that the media, the mass media, has a liberal or left-wing bias, you may want to think twice about it. You are involved in a movement which started out as a genuine movement against governmental corruption. But now you've been co-opted in such a way that you believe that the government itself is the problem. A government for and by the people is not the problem. So we should be solving this problem. This problem comes from the very top, namely the corporations which own our government, virtually all of our representatives. And all that is ever being said from the teabaggers or movement is the only complaint they have is about taxes. We're being taxed. Most people in this income bracket are actually not being taxed higher. But the rhetoric is so convincing that you tend to believe that anybody earning under $50,000 a year, or as a family maybe $80,000, is being taxed to the max, when this is an absolute lie. Actually, the big guys on the top, earning more than $250,000, are getting the tax breaks. So as long as you want to talk about taxes, maybe you should look into it a bit further. This popular rhetoric out there in terms of corruption is not directed against the corporations which own our government at this point, but against the government itself, when in actuality we have the power to change this government still. I know there's very little chance of that happening now, thanks to the recent Supreme Court ruling. But it's not government that is the problem, not under a constitutional government, which is supposed to be us. So ranting and raving against government per se is just giving in to the corporate gurus, which tell you from the very top that government is bad. Government is not bad as long as it's not owned by the corporate elite. The overt racism in the speech by Tangreo is cannot be overemphasized, and anyone in the original teabagger movement should immediately disassociate themselves from this. You know, Tangreo, this Republican candidate who actually ran on the Republican ticket, is now your best friend? And you call this independence? This entire nation was founded on the notion of immigration, including Tangreo's family, who came from Italy. Of course, you know, they were white. I came here because I was white. No biggie, you know. No problem. Nobody addresses the fact that big corporations have no problem with illegal immigration into this country because they can essentially employ those people for lower wages in order to drive down all wages in this country. So this entire rant against, and this is going to be an upcoming issue, against illegal immigrants, that's not really the problem. The problem is who is taking advantage of whom and why. It wouldn't be happening if somebody wasn't hiring these people. And why do you think they're being hired? Because it's cheap labor. That's why. Plain and simple. Supply and demand. Think about these issues very, very hard before trying to scapegoat anybody in this country. Because that's what it's going to be all about in the future, is scapegoating and pitting people against each other. The handwriting is on the wall, in case you don't see it.